Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Coach Gerald Lami podcast. I will be bringing you content with some of the best sport personalities around the world, sharing their journey with the listeners and inspiring the next generation. Today, I've got someone special, someone who's helped me along my journey, someone I hold in high regards. I would like to introduce Troy Townsend. Welcome, Unks.
Yeah, that's a big up there, G man. I like that. I'm having that all day long, but pleasure to be
No,
on, man.
welcome. Pleasure. Now, I call you Unks because, you've got that father figure aura about you, as you're always trying to help others. Does that come naturally to you?
Do you know, helping others has come naturally because it was the kind of help and support that when I was growing up and trying to become
Mm,
a player or a professional or whatever it is you want to be, that I didn't get, unfortunately. And at the time, I didn't think I needed it because I thought my 2 feet were going to be the things that were going to take me on to an everlasting career. Unfortunately, once you've felt the impact of being released and you feel that impact twice in a short space of time with no one to turn to really for any kind of advice or support, you then realize that actually you can't do this journey alone, you know.
mm, mm,
And I dropped out the game really early, 16, in terms of trying to get into, trying to develop my academy career and stuff like that into a professional level. And it had a detrimental impact on me, my well-being. My home life wasn't great anyway, to be totally honest. I didn't have real support from my parents, my brother, and I had to fend for myself. And in trying to fend for myself, I got to admit that I got into some real bad company, for a long period of time that actually formed and shaped another part of my life, that's one that I'm not really proud of, but one that I did because that kind of support or love that you're talking about is I just searched for it anywhere I could. And in growing up, that's what I've always been about, since not making it in the game. I've always tried to help and support others, probably just like me, similar to me, whose background, not great in terms of their family life and whatever else, but they have a talent and they have a skill.
mm,
And ultimately, from being a PE teacher for 15 years, running my own sports development company, helping young people trying to achieve in sport that actually transferred to helping them academically back into the classroom environment, through my coaching career and, trying to help and support people there, and all the way through to what I do now, which is, supporting people trying to work in football, so it's been a part of me all the way, G. It's something that I'm very proud of, and also ultimately where that kind of support that I lacked, I try and do the best that I can for other people now.
Oh, amazing. No, I can obviously, I know firsthand anyway, but do you think, obviously, your case, I can relate to your case, I've been in the same situation, but do you think there's enough support mechanism now for these young athletes or just youth in general that are coming up? Do you think there's enough support for them in general?
I don't know. I know. I don't think I can sit here and say that there's enough support, because every time that a young life leaves us, then you kind of
Mm,
think to yourself, what is going on out there? One of the massive things for me is that took me off the streets when I was younger was we had youth clubs. We had
mm,
an area where we can go to and play recreational sport, and be amongst our friends, and it kept us away from just walking the streets, to be totally honest. When I was leaving school, my dad had left me at early doors, so my mum wasn't home till about 6, 7 o'clock. So it meant
mm,
that I had the opportunity from 3:30 to roam the streets and get in just before she got in, and it was the youth clubs or the after school clubs that actually kept me busy. So I wasn't doing any wrong. Do you know what I mean? Although my mum
mm,
wanted me in directly from school. But it was those, but I wanted to be amongst my friends, and
mm,
wanted to play sport, because sport was the only thing that I thought that I was ever really good at.
mm,
Um, and just the kind of the opportunity to continue to be around young people in a safe environment. Ever since we've taken youth clubs away, ever since we've stopped that
mm,
provision, it's become harder and harder to support young people who, are going through certain trials and tribulations, and are also kind of want that guidance. They're crying out for that
mm,
guidance, but that guidance has been taken away. So I think we're failing our young people in this day and age. The fact that most of them are turning to a lot of them, sorry, not most of them, are turning to this gang culture, and this crime that's we're
mm,
seeing our young people like leave us at such a young age. We're letting them down. We are letting them down. But I don't want to knock everybody, because there's still good people out there that provide opportunities, that work tirelessly for young people, that are taking it off their own back to try and support or guide their journey. So on one hand, I think we're in a very good place with that, but on the other hand, I think the country is failing young people, just with the fact that they don't provide the kind of opportunity that young people need in this day and age.
mm. No, I agree with you because even talking about these people that are trying to help, like in my opinion, because even myself when I was working for Arsenal Community, they tried to help as much as we could, but then there's other people that are not working for big organizations and they don't have that sort of support. Like, how hard is it for them to try and continue to keep helping these kids? Because at the end of the day, they've got to put food on their table as well.
Well,
Do you know what I mean? So,
I know for a fact, G. We used to run, holiday camps. We used to run,
mm,
after school club provisions.
mm,
Me and my business partner Steve Brown, we used to run all sport in Waltham Forest for about, I don't know,
mm,
10, 15 years, and it was with the sole aim of providing opportunity for young people, but also letting them show their talent and their skill.
mm,
And letting them show what they can achieve. And ultimately we were, parents had to pay us to look after their children, of course, but
mm,
it wasn't rocket money. It wasn't money that would, that would leave them, wondering where their next penny is going to come from. But it was a safe provision, and our max, we had over 100 odd young children like coming and developing their sporting prowess with us, which was absolutely amazing. And then comes along, your local football club, Leighton Orient, who can do things for
mm,
free because they've got funding from here, or Tottenham, who started to grow in the area, and West Ham. And then all of a sudden, what I felt we had, which was unique because we were personal towards these young people, and they could see black role models as well,
mm, mm,
was taken away, and the business kind of just went not down the pan, but obviously struggled, because you get the likes of Leighton Orient and you get the likes of Tottenham coming into your environment, and people think the glossy names mean that they're bigger and better than you. But I would always say that I felt that our provision was so much better, so much more professional than the football clubs when they came in.
No, for sure. And even like times like this that we're in at the moment, it kind of just shows how important these things are. Because I've seen some parents online and they're just saying that, like in terms of school and after school curriculums and things like that, how
Mm,
important they are for children at the moment. Because
mm,
you can't just keep these kids indoors because they're just creative people. They want to do things, and especially like sports activities. It's hard for them to stay indoors at the moment. So I think in terms of the government or whoever's funding these organizations, I think they need to look at this moment and think that, these people are very, very important to our community, let alone
yeah,
society. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? So it's only
yeah.
going to help people to grow.
There's
So,
a
but,
little part of me that wishes we were still running now. If we had our ultimate
mm,
sports and what we could do, and the way that we became parental figures for a lot of young
mm,
people. And I think that's the thing that drives on some of us on, is that we understand that the difficulties back home, behind closed doors, and
mm,
we became parental figures, and figures that these young people can look up to. And the amount of
mm,
young people now who are getting older that still recognize me, and say thank you for what I did for when they were younger, and how I helped
mm,
supported them. Is honestly, it's the thing that touches me the most.
mm, mm. So I wanted to touch on like your coaching journey because that's how we kind of crossed paths at the beginning. I won't
Yeah.
mention the story at the moment, but what um, what made you stop coaching? Because
What
I'm
made me
sure
stop
was that some
coaching or start
yeah.
coaching?
What
Stop
stop
coaching.
coaching? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure obviously the love of the game that you just wanted to be part of the game made you kind of start coaching. But what made you say, you know what, I'm not gonna coach no more?
Well, there was a particular incident. My work now, obviously, at Kick It Out means that I travel a lot across the country, and my work takes me. It's not a regular 9 to 5 job, and
Mm-hmm.
takes up a lot of my time. But there was a particular incident. So at the time, I had my own academy, which S&T Academy, again with Steve Brown, God rest his soul. But we formed an academy for 5 years, where again we started to work at a level with young players, boys and girls, that brought them to prominence. To be totally honest, it was the thing that I stopped non-league coaching, so I was a coach and a manager at non-league level, and I stopped because of my own son Andros, and his journey was starting to begin.
Okay.
So I was doing literally 6 days a week at non-league Leighton Football Club,
Mm-hmm.
and it just wasn't possible anymore. I wanted to watch his journey. He was just starting out, and I felt that I couldn't give anything more to football, but I had to focus on my own son. But I was still doing the kind of, and I stopped for about 4 years, 4 years, and then me and Steve one day just decided to do some football coaching during the summer, with some young people, because again, we felt energized to do this again, and as long as it was just coaching during the summer, I was all right with that. And then all of a sudden, these young boys and girls said they didn't want to go back to their clubs, and they wanted to form, they wanted to be a part of a team. So we formed S&T Academy for 5 years. Just again, it stimulated me, and it made me believe again that what I was doing was right. But the reason why I stopped, unfortunately, was because at the end of one season, it was becoming tough anyway because of work. And if I'm not, able to do the coaching on a Thursday night or on a Saturday morning, preparing for a Sunday, I was finding it difficult. Um, but the lads, my team, unfortunately, was racially abused by parents of the opposition, and we went through a process. It was the second time that the lads had been victimised in a year. Almost a year before, they were
Mm-hmm.
attacked on the football pitch, and there was a Stafford Bull Terrier was set off and chased them, and they were beaten up. I'm not going to deny it. They were beaten up on the football pitch because of the ability and the quality of how they played football. And for me, I'm staggered by that. And then a year later, after a really good game of football, actually, which ended 4-4, they were racially abused by parents of the opposition. Now, my position allows me to kind of raise the prominence within my case, but unfortunately, it took 6 months, and unfortunately, the parents of the opposition were allowed to get away with it.
Wow.
During the end of that season, I felt I was becoming a target because people were starting to recognise me a little bit more, and in becoming a target, I felt that it was putting pressure under the players.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people were goading me a little bit to try and get me in trouble, if you want me to be totally honest, G.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, I felt for the better of the players, and for actually the better of my own well-being, because of my standing and position in the game. I kind of said to the lads, I can't do this anymore, and in protecting you, I have to walk away. And it was probably one of the most difficult decisions that I'd ever made, because
Mm-hmm.
the enjoyment that I was getting out of training on a Thursday and a Saturday, and watching them implement the stuff that we were doing on a Sunday was honestly, it was unrivaled, G.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to protect them as young people. I had to almost protect myself and the journey that I was going on in my job. Um, and yeah, and it came to a close. I don't regret the decision, but I do miss it. Like, I can't lie. I always look at little bits of old footage and images, and I think to myself, boy, you finished too early, But
Mm-hmm.
I felt that it's something that I had to do, G, for the betterment of my own personal well-being, which struggles at times, and just for the fact that the players needed to be able to flourish, maybe without me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, they didn't. Unfortunately, they lasted another season, and then they kind of ended themselves. So it was a real shame, and I think I'm responsible for that. But ultimately, I had to look after myself and them.
No, but at the same time, you put yourself as a sacrifice for these young children to actually continue playing football without any pressure. But then at the same time, like you're saying, because you had so much influence on them on the pitch and off the pitch, that was probably the only hope that they had with you. But again, you've had to look out for your own well-being, even for your family as well. At the end of the day,
Yeah,
because you mentioned about your son who's played at a high level, who's playing at a high level,
mm,
even that could reflect on him after because of what's been happening on a grassroots level. Do you know what I mean? So you've
yeah,
had to
yeah,
take that sacrifice, and sometimes that's just how it goes. But you
yeah.
spoke about Andros and his journey. So once he started getting a bit serious
Mm.
through his journey, was you hands on with it, or did you leave the coaching to the coaches, or did you anytime give him advice off the pitch or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I mean, once you're in an environment, remember he's been in the academy environment since the age
Mm,
of 8.
mm,
And to be honest with you, I obviously used to go and watch a lot of the games at his early stage, but I was coaching as well. So obviously lots of things clashed, and I had an older son who was in part of my team as well. So, you
mm,
kind of split family loyalties and make sure that your sons are at least have one of the parents there while they're playing the sport
mm,
that they love. Obviously, you kind of drop hints and advice and whatever else, but predominantly
mm,
is you've got to let them grow, and you've got to let them grow by themselves. And if they want advice and support, then hopefully they'd reach out for it. We used to do
mm,
extra bits. He's always doing extra bits, Andros, when he was younger, and take a bag of balls and go over to the local park or the local
mm,
ground that we had literally across the road from us, to be totally honest, and smash balls in
mm,
there. And yeah, I'd go over and we'd work on a few bits. But ultimately, by the time he was 13, 14, and the new regime at Tottenham came in, John McDermott and
mm.
Chris Ramsey and Alex Inglethorpe, I kind of knew he was in good hands,
Good hands, yeah, yeah.
with good advice, good support, and also the ones that would challenge him as well.
Mm,
And then once he finally made it as a professional, yeah, of course you watch his games and you kind of make a few comments, but I didn't want to overload him with there's sometimes when you can smother your children, isn't there? And there's sometimes when
mm,
they'll need the odd bits of advice just to help them along the way. If he takes it, he takes it. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But it doesn't hurt. But yeah, would always little prompt messages, or when I couldn't get to academy games, would drop him a text and just ask him how he did out of 10, and that was a way of opening up a lot of conversation. But
mm,
when you're behind closed doors back at home, you kind of just want him to forget football a little bit and be a child. And I think that's one of the most important things that we did, was distance the football and the home life. And the football is the football, the outside stuff, but when you're back at home, you just become the son or the brother, and everything's treated as it would be in a normal family that doesn't have a child who's going through that process. And remember, he became a professional player, and he was still living at home as well, and that could be quite funny, because the pressures now of playing professional football and then putting the key back
mm.
in the door and coming home, you want to kind of distance that a little bit. So that's how we approached it anyway, and I think that it worked well, to be totally honest. And with his continued career now, and just enjoy going out and watching him playing.
No, I was only asking because obviously I've seen parents as well in the past and even now sometimes like when they watch their children play and they're giving out information on the sideline, shouting, screaming. What advice would you give to those parents?
Yeah, never been a fan of that. Never ever been a bad
Yeah.
fan of that. When I used to go and watch Andros, I used to distance myself from the parents and just go and watch down the touch line, because
Mm,
I didn't want to be a part of all that, because I always say that, I know what it's like. You're being in the middle, and you want to impress your parents. I don't care. You want to impress the people that you love. But your first thought should be the information given to you by your coaching staff. And I always say that, there's 4 elements of your brain as such. And I know there's a lot more, but I like to identify these 4 elements. And one element is the information that you receive before the game, so from your manager,
mm,
from your coach. One element is the information you receive, during the game, from your teammates. The other element is the opposition, and you're scanning off the opposition.
mm,
And then the
mm,
final element is the touchline, and you've got to prioritize what is best for you. And obviously the information from the coach is your first port of call, but the information around the pitch, opposition and teammates, is the next most important thing. If you can hear that voice from the touchline, that is disturbing the other 3 bits of information that are very important to how you play your game. And I think
mm,
then, I've never ever, I would always say to parents, not just the voice, but the body language as well.
Mm,
Players can pick up on that. Young people are not silly. They know where you are. They know the position that you stand. They know that some of the comments that you make, and they know the way that your body means a certain thing as well. So it's important that as much as you can, and I know how difficult that can be because your body moves in the action of the way that your son is playing the game. But it's to try and keep it to a minimum. But obviously, I have a lot of conversations with parents, and there was one parent that told me that he used to do signals for his son, and he used to
mm,
tap shoulders. So if he tapped his left shoulder, it meant that he had to scan over his left shoulder. If he tapped his right shoulder, it meant that the lad
mm,
had to scan over his right shoulder. Now, as a defender, if you're watching your father tapping
mm,
shoulders and you're up against a decent forward, and it
yeah,
happened, he tapped his left shoulder. His son took his eye off the ball a little while. The forward round him, bam, smash, top corner.
mm,
So I said to the parent, what did you do? He said, I had a go at him. And I said, how can you have a go at your son? Well, he said he didn't
mm.
react quick enough. And I said, well, you've
But
put him
how
off
can it?
of his reaction. Yeah, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean, G?
yeah,
And
yeah.
honestly, the parent couldn't understand it and couldn't quite picture why he was doing wrong. And I used to say that about a parent I had who used to stand behind the goal and watch his boy because his boy was
Mm.
the goalkeeper,
Okay, okay.
and couldn't understand why I was so frustrated and wanted him to move away from the goal. He'd only just joined me, and it's something that he'd always
Mm,
done, as a kind of protection for his son. But ultimately, I didn't want it. I didn't want him there because it meant that he
mm,
was playing the game for his son. But also, if his son would make a mistake, he'd be having a go at his son. So
mm.
it's a difficult thing, G, because we all think we all know what we're doing best for our
Of course,
children, but
yeah,
ultimately
yeah.
you've got to allow them to live and by their mistakes and learn by mistakes, but also live with the good bits and learn from all aspects of the game, and not
Mm.
to apply that parental pressure that can unfortunately be detrimental towards what they're doing whilst they're on the grass.
So, do you think clubs are doing enough work with parents to kind of educate them in terms of their behaviors?
Well, that's my role. um,
Okay.
so I'm doing a lot of that when I do parental sessions. But if you ask me, no, I don't think clubs are doing enough. I've done
Mm-hmm.
parental sessions before where I ask honest questions with parents, G, and I ask questions like, "What are you like on the touchline?" And I
Mm-hmm.
remember doing a session with an unnamed club where the parents were in the back and the I think they were under 11s were at the front, and I'm delivering a dual session, which is not great, but it identified a practice because the parents were saying, "No, we're really good on the touchline, and we're this and we're that and the other." And you know what it's like, the innocence of young people. One of the young lads got up and said, "My dad always shouts at me," and he
Wow.
embarrassed the father, who actually was one of those who was quite vocal about, yeah, no, we're very good on the touchline and we keep it all buttoned up and we don't say anything. And his son just got up, put his hand up, and just said, "My dad always shouts at me," and he embarrassed the father. But I think more could be done. I think much more could be done, and the communication between clubs and parents sometimes it could be a lot better. Yes, you see their son as an asset, but you have to involve the parent in that process, and hopefully the parents will then take things on board a lot more, that the club is involving them a lot more. And again, I don't want to put all clubs under the same banner because I do go places where parents, they are well looked after and they are well thought of and they're kept in communication processes a lot. So, but ultimately the general theme is that actually it could still be a lot better because if you want to develop the young man, it's a journey that you have to develop the parents along with them, because
Mm.
they're seen as elite players, which means that they're supposed to be elite parents as well. And that can be a difficult word sometimes for people to
Mm.
take on board.
So you spoke about the parent that basically he hammered his son for just keeping his eye off the ball for a split second. How did you handle your journey with Andros in terms of his emotions and if he ever had a bad game or he made a mistake? How did you handle his emotions and
I
yours?
mean,
Matter of fact.
yeah, listen, it's not. Make a mistake is part and parcel of the game. During the
Mm,
development stage, if you don't make mistakes, everyone thinks that you're the best thing since sliced
mm,
bread, and there's not a player out there that's like that. So, yeah, listen, I can't deny that you get frustrated at that because you always want the best. But I think I managed to manage my own personal emotions very well on that without giving much
mm,
away. And one of the times that I really noted to me how much they are aware of where you are. We were late for one of his games at Tottenham, when they were at the Chigwell training base. And as we were driving, we've had an accident at the top of the road down to Chigwell. So we banged cars, we've had to wait, and we've missed the first 15 minutes. So as we've got in, me and my daughter, and I'm walking towards the spot where I stand, I'm asking the parents as I'm walking past them, what's the score? What's the score? Oh, it's 1-0, and Andrus has scored. So, oh, damn, missed a goal, this, that, and the other.
Mm.
Anyway, watch the rest of the game. He's done very well. And they think they've won 5-0. And as he's walked off the pitch, I said, well done, well done. It says, great goal, this, that, and the other. And he kind of went, well, how do you know? And I went,
Mm.
well, it's because, you put the team 1-0 up. And he
Mm.
went, well, you weren't
Yeah.
here. You didn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he knew that we wasn't there at the time. And it's funny because it kind of then said to me, wow, no matter where you are, where you're standing, no matter how much they're engrossed in the game, they do know if you're there or where you are, and it was a thing that, it was unavoidable, but it kind of said to me,
Mm.
make sure that when you are there, to make sure that you check yourself. That's the most important
Mm.
thing. Check what you are doing.
Mm.
And he would have known that we weren't engrossed in the talking part of it with other parents, but that then
Mm.
isolates us to then be able to be more recognizable. But yeah, my emotions were kept in check. Like I said
Mm.
to you, we used to, if I wasn't at games, I used to drop him a text message just to see how he went, and he would explain, yeah, I had a 7, missed a couple of crosses and didn't do this well, or I had a 9, scored a couple of goals, set up a couple of goals, and stuff like that. So
Mm.
in his own head, he's also developing his mindset about what he's done. So he's evaluating his own game as well. So I'm not saying it's easy, but
Mhm.
there wasn't pressure applied, and I think the more pressure you apply to your son, with the pressure of trying to make it in the game, is double the pressure and double the pain. So it's a tough
Mm.
industry anyway. And I think that, ultimately, as long as you're there, as long as you're that safe pair of hands. Remember, I didn't have my parents around when I was trying to develop in this game. I always thought that my ability was going to be enough to take me to where I thought I was going to be. And I thought I was going to be a professional footballer.
Mm.
People were telling me all the signs as well. It's always when things are always good when you're playing well, but then no one really is around when you're not playing well. And if you
Mm.
do have good people around you, even if it's not to say that you've done well, you've done bad, but ultimately just to give you that safe space, then I would
Mm.
applaud that all the time.
No, that's amazing. It's amazing. I hope anyone that's listening to parents, because I think that's a big, big a mark that a lot of people miss about parents because, like you said, they just focus on the players and they see them as assets. But I think getting the parents on board with a vision, and I'm sure a lot of clubs are doing that anyway,
Yeah,
but just off the touchline and just at home as well, because you could behave in a certain way on a touchline, but maybe when you get home, it could be a different thing behind closed doors. Like you gave an example of that parent, which he said that, yeah, we keep it all quiet over here, but his son was saying he shouts at him. So,
exactly.
no, it's
Listen,
important.
I've also, I've seen parents have told me that they take 2 cars to games. One,
Mm.
the mum drives the son to the game, because mum's all like keeping him focused and whatever else. And the dad will be the one that takes him home. And if it's a bad game, they drive straight past McDonald's. But if it's a good game, they go into McDonald's. Do you know what I
Wow.
mean? Things like that. And
Yeah, that's
I
sad to
scratch my
hear.
head about some of it a lot of the times, but ultimately, if you can influence, I do. If people don't want to be influenced and want to create their own journey because they feel it's best and that's them as a parent, you can only give some key elements of advice, G. Do you know what I mean? And hopefully
Mm.
they'll
No,
pick it
for
up and
sure.
understand from there.
No, for sure, for sure. So your current role working with Kick It Out has impacted a lot of people in the game, including myself. How have you found your time there so far?
You know what? I've just passed 8 years at Kick It Out, and boy, what a journey it's been, G. It's been
Mm.
just over the last few years, I found things tough. If you want me to be totally honest, I found this
Mm.
industry. I think my voice, has been diminishing. To be totally honest, obviously we've seen more and more incidents of racial discrimination on our
Mm.
pitches, in our stadiums, abroad. I'm not sure people are listening. I think that
Mm.
I'm not saying it's easy to eradicate it all, but definitely I feel that we could be doing so much more
Mm,
in terms of one, identifying it, and two, supporting individuals who have been affected by it. My work behind the scenes, so my work in academies, I've got to be honest, I absolutely love it. Talking to players,
mm,
from nines all the way up to the under 23s, talking to coaching staff, talking to parents. Gee, it keeps me alive. It keeps me going. Do you know
mm,
what I mean? I love the environment. And when you think that all I ever wanted to be was someone in the environment, and
mm,
many, many years later, I'm now helping support that environment.
mm,
It's a great thing, honestly.
I can
And then
imagine. I can imagine.
yeah, obviously, as well, I do the other program, which is the Raise Your Game program, which is trying to help
Mm,
individuals, find work within football through mentoring, through the events that I have. And again, the drive and passion that I have for that program and supporting individuals, which obviously we started off with today, is the thing that keeps me going and keeps me buzzing for the job. So there's elements of it that I must admit I get frustrated on a daily basis every time, after a weekend there's incidents of discrimination, and I'll get a call and I get challenged, and I've become the go-to person. And I don't not even sure I like that, because ultimately people think that a lot of these news outlets think that I don't know anything about football apart from racism.
mm,
So they've put me in a box, and where, if it's racism, where's Troy? We need to speak to Troy, but ultimately
mm,
there's a lot more to me than just that, and I can talk a good game if I really want to, but ultimately but I have to say, the G, that if I didn't do it, I'm not quite sure who else would be doing it. So if
mm,
it keeps
mm.
things in the public domain, and people question me a lot of the time, and all you do is talk about racism, well, unfortunately, it's because it still exists.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's out there. So
And I
sorry, G.
wanted to speak to you. No, I wanted to speak to you just briefly about that. In terms of, obviously, I know myself anyway, because even though I've mentioned it before, they see me as a white lad, but
Yeah.
once I start speaking and they get into deep and they find out where I'm from, then it's a different story. But do you think, and it's also as well when it comes to backroom staff, you hardly see any black coaches or different ethnic minorities working in these clubs. Do you see that changing anytime soon?
I'd like to say yes, and it's something that again
Mm,
I've tried to champion, but I'm not so sure. I mean, we've been working in this game for far too long to see the
mm,
same kind of paltry figures of black and ethnic minority managers, two, three, four. I think at one stage we got up to about eight, and it was looking good, and then it goes down again. We brought in our own version of the Rooney Rule. Well, the Football League have brought in their own version of the Rooney Rule called the Mandatory Code, which is
mm,
making sure that if you have an open recruitment process, that you identify a black and ethnic minority manager coach to interview for the job, and that's all it is to interview for the job. But I don't even know if that process is working, to be honest, G, either. It says an open recruitment process. You've got to remember, when these managers or owners sack managers, they kind of know who they want already to bring into the role, don't they? Do you know what I mean? So
mm,
I don't see an increase at all. I think it needs something radical. There's a lot of people out there saying, I don't want to get a job just because I'm deemed black and whatever else. But
mm,
there's a bottleneck up there, G. We've got good non-league coaches, we've got good
mm,
non-league managers. We come through the system, and it just seems like there's this bottleneck at the top of the game that doesn't allow them to flourish. And you look at the guys down at Dulwich Hamlet,
Yeah,
good
they
non-league
run well.
football club. Yeah, run well,
Mm,
been doing it for how many years? 10 plus years.
mm,
Success rate is unbelievable. Production of players is unbelievable. Gavin Rose has been
mm,
immense at that level, but I don't know. I don't know if Gavin's settled and happy to do just Dulwich, but I don't see
mm,
this flood of people coming in saying, "We'd love to take you and your coaching staff." Maybe listen, maybe
mm,
Gavin is. I know Gavin well, but maybe he is happy just at Dulwich. But I, I don't know. I just, that doesn't stop the inquiries, and that shouldn't stop the people
mm.
saying, the amount of players you produce. We don't only want the players, we want you as a management staff
You
as
as a
well to
manager,
come in and
yeah,
support.
yeah.
So um, I'm not sure if it's going to change anytime soon. Again, I think people get bored of the topic of conversation. Why do we need more black coaches? Why do we need you know, the battles that I have within this game are tremendous, G. And if I really spoke up, then maybe I wouldn't be in a job anymore. So, it's one of those where I just think,
Yeah, it's a
we're
shame.
in, yeah, we're in a tough period of time, and when I was coaching, I only wanted to help people, so I didn't want to coach in a professional environment. I ran my own academies. I saw the benefit of my own academies. We used to take players that came out of the game sometimes, help them with their self-esteem, help them with their confidence, because you've got to remember the reason they went into the academy because they were deemed a good player. When they come out of
Mm,
the academy, they question their ability. They question their very thought process. They can be good. So we helped with that process, and it's that level was what I wanted to do. Yes, I went into the non-league game and managed and coached at that level, and that gave me a couple of quid, but also gave me the ability to show me that actually I can work with adults. I can work with senior players. I can work with ex players. I can work with ex professionals. I love that level of game. A lot more pressure, obviously, because everything is defined on results, but it
mm,
didn't stop me from loving that level of the game. I didn't feel that I wanted to go any higher because I didn't trust the game any
mm.
higher. Do you know what I mean, G? So
Yeah,
I
no, I
didn't
was
want to
just
get
about to
myself
say
into
that
that.
as well. Yeah, I was just
Mm,
about to say that in terms of Gavin, because I remember I went down to Dulwich when I was a bit younger,
mm,
and I just remember the setup. I was thinking, this is a non-league club, and the way they run is just so professional in terms of like discipline, and especially like the boys that are coming into the club. They're obviously coming from South London, East London, North London. You had different mixes, but once you get there, there's no messing around. And you
yeah,
just had that ultimate respect for Gavin and all the other staff as well. But then again, it goes down to what you just said is the politics in the game if you go up higher. And do you want to risk helping out these youths that you've been helping out to go up higher? And there's going to be politics anyway. So is it worth to go and do that thing? So nice. And it's sad to see because, like you said, there's so much talent in the
yeah,
non-league
yeah,
and
without
a
doubt.
lot of these a lot of these boys that are going into professional academies, if you check their background, majority of them will be coming from inner city, London,
Mm,
or do you know what I mean? They're coming from a certain background, and a lot of these
exactly.
coaches, I feel like they don't really understand these kids to a certain extent. It's only I'm not too sure now because I haven't been around academy environment in a long
Mm,
time, but I can only imagine there's still a few old school mentality around the clubs and whatnot. So I'm not too sure. 'Cause you go around clubs yourself anyway. You could probably
yeah.
speak better than me in
Gee,
terms of
I'm
how.
not gonna knock. I'm not gonna knock this game. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna knock anyone over the age of
Mm,
of a certain age,
mm,
but you've got to develop with the game as well. So you
mm,
mentioned word there, old school mentality.
mm,
Yes, you can have an old school mentality, but you need to be up to date. You need to be able to, I was going to say flex. I'm not quite sure your listeners would understand that, but you
Probably
need to
there'll
be
be a
able,
few. There'll be a few.
but you need to be able to transition as well. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean, G?
yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah,
be a
yeah, yeah.
50 plus year old coach in this industry. Of course you can.
Mm,
And be coaching 16s, 15s, 14s. Of course you can. But like
mm,
you said, you need to be able to be on their level as well. You
mm,
need to be able to understand young people of today who are totally
mm,
different to young people of 20 years ago. And I think that
mm,
is a particular skill that not everybody can have. You've got to be able to resonate with young people. We're living in a different period of time now, and young people have been brought up slightly differently, and the football mentality is different to what it was 20 years ago, as it
mm,
was 20 years previous. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
And to be
no, for
able
sure.
to adapt and be able to stay relevant is a very tough job, is a very, very tough job. And I think that
Mm,
sometimes that we don't appreciate or understand the staying relevant part,
mm,
and the fact that we have to be able to talk on a level, yes, show authority. And I'm not knocking
mm,
the showing authority bit, but we have
mm,
to be able to talk on a level with young people.
mm,
And I'm not quite sure that there's loads that, with those tools and those traits that can
mm,
see them
mm,
coach senior players, that can see them coach, young teenagers, that can see them coach the younger element. For me, that's the top quality coach, the one that can
mm,
go
mm,
through all the levels. I identify Chris Ramsey like that. Chris Ramsey at
mm,
Queen's Park Rangers. You can go through all the levels and earn and command that respect whilst be able
mm,
to
mm,
dominate and coach through the levels. that I identify someone like him. There's others out there, but because
mm,
I've worked with Chris and I understand Chris, he's one that I would always flag up as someone who,
mm.
can do that throughout the levels. It's not easy, but for me, it makes the mark of a coach.
No, for sure. So you like we spoke about earlier on, you go around the country and you visit a lot of clubs, and I don't want people just to think because you come from a certain area anyway that these kids have the same mentality. When you go up to, for instance, say for example, I don't know, somewhere like Newcastle, do you see any similarities with the mentality of the youth up there compared to London?
Listen, I'm not going to change anywhere I go, whether it's from the deepest south or the highest north.
Mm,
Young people mentality at the moment are very similar. Doesn't matter almost where you come from now. There's a mentality of young people around the country now that is very similar. That, if you embrace it and you can understand young people, then I think
mm,
you'll know how to manage it. Yes, you look at London and you look at all the clubs in London, but I go up north now and I see a lot of players from London. So
mm,
actually, this is something that I found to do. Just because you don't make it at one of the clubs or the big clubs in London is not the end of
mm,
your career.
mm,
And branching out, actually going up north, going up the Midlands, going further up north, going, a little slight to the left or slight to the right. Right, there'll be teams out there that will want you and would be able to
mm,
provide you with a platform that maybe the London clubs couldn't, because obviously
mm,
in London it's almost a rat race.
mm,
And I'm seeing a similar mentality right across the board, right across the country, in terms of how young players are developing, in terms of their thought processes, in terms of the parenting, like I said before.
mm,
Um, and I still think that there's a lot more support and help needed for this journey. And
mm,
if there was more people like me, if there was more people that maybe are not attached to the clubs but go in and
mm,
provide that support, maybe the benefit for the young people and their families would be greater. But
mm,
sometimes, and I'm going to say this, sometimes you don't hear the stories until actually people
mm,
fall out the game, and
mm, mm.
then
It's too
become,
late then, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, then become happier to talk about their experiences and
Mm,
become, because the game can't hold them then. Do you know what I mean, G? It
mm,
can't hold them to their very words. So actually, parents talk up a little bit more, the players talk up a
mm,
little bit more, and you kind of learn some of the experience that they've had within the environment. And that always hurts me because I think to myself, well, they can't talk out, because the environment questions whether they would then make it in the game. So how
mm,
much can you challenge within the game? I remember
mm,
Carlton Cole, ex West Ham forward, Chelsea forward, said at an event of mine only last year that he felt that sometimes the game stopped him from being the person that he was, from
mm,
talking out in the manner that he wanted to, because
mm,
it was either you get to the top our way or you talk out and your pathway will be blocked. And
mm, mm,
I've always, those words have kind of haunted me all the time, because I think if that's similar for Carlton, who obviously did get to the top, how many
mm.
more have had that, those
Had
words
that
said to
journey,
them?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and fallen by the wayside.
No, it's crazy. So again, so you've been around a lot of these clubs. What's one thing that you'd say these players need help with? Because I'm sure there's a lot of similarities, but a lot of similarities in terms of help. What sort of help do you think they need with?
Oh, that's a tough one, because obviously it's quite unique, isn't it, to an individual, to
Mm,
be totally honest.
mm,
Some think they're going to make it in the game without realizing that maybe their club has only ever promoted one youth player in about 10 years. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
So actually kind of
mm,
preparing yourself for a journey away from your parent club, do you embrace loans? One of the things we ask players is about embracing loans, about embracing,
mm,
would you go and play in the non-league to help develop your career, or would you go and play in League Two or League One?
mm,
And I've got to admit that sometimes there's an arrogance about players that actually, no, I wouldn't go and play down there. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't go and do. Ultimately, if it's going to benefit your career and
mm,
put professional games under your belt, why would you not do
mm,
that? So I
mm,
still think there's an arrogance out there, and I think we need to strip down that arrogance, and tell players that actually what can benefit their career. 50 games out on loan. with the experiences that you're going to get, with the earning the 3 points, with the challenges, the battles, the fans on your back, the fans supporting you, that could be the
Mm,
best part of development of your career. I would almost say stop playing in your safe zone.
mm-hmm,
Stop, I'm not an advocate of the under 23s football the way that it is at the moment.
mm,
Anyone that's 21, 20, playing under 23s football, I'd question how far they're going to get in the game. Um, the under 18s, I tend to think if you're not a first year playing up at under 18s level, then what's going on? What are you doing? If you're an 18 playing at under 18s level, have you ever asked your club if you can go out on loan? Have you ever asked your club if you can go and play men's football? I always think that, when I had my teams, and yes, this is a totally different level of football, I always played them up a year. So the S&T
mm-hmm,
Academy, we didn't play at under 15s, we played at under 16s.
mm-hmm,
Why? Because I wanted the players to test themselves. We were a good side with technically very, very good players. I always wanted the
mm-hmm,
players to test themselves at a level above. And I always think that if you're a player in an environment and you're happy to run along in your own age group, then maybe you're not going to break the barrier that you need to. And I know,
mm-hmm,
G, that clubs, they're
mm.
looking at the top three players, aren't they? They're
Yeah,
looking at
for sure.
those that are in that top catchment level. So if you're one of the top
Mm,
three players, you're playing above. Don't you? But if you're one of the lads that are always playing at under 13s, under 14s, under 15s, you've never trained with the under 16s, you've never gone and
mm,
trained with the older age groups. I'm not saying in every case, but I'm kind of questioning where you want to be then.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's something that I would always challenge players on, and I'd challenge them to always try and better themselves. But the
Mm,
most thing for me is yeah, the 23s football. If you're playing 23s and you're one of the older 23s, you should have been out already, or two,
mm,
I kind of saying that you've not got a career at that club, and actually they're just
mm,
stockpiling you to make sure
mm.
that they can play football.
There was a lot of gems that you said there, and I wish that, well, whoever's listening to this, that they can take this on board, whether it be youth players, parents, coaches, because you've got so much wealth and experience within the game. And like you said, a lot of these maybe tabloids or media try and put you in one box. But I know
Mm.
myself personally what you've offered and what you can offer to the game in general. Anyway, even things like Raise Your Game. When I first came, I couldn't believe like what the people that were in the room, and I was like, this is for free. That people need to understand what you've been doing for the game as well. Is giving so much to the youth players from when you was coaching to the visits that you're doing now and continuously just helping grow the game and just being a spokesman for some people that probably don't have the confidence or don't feel like they've got a big enough voice or platform to share the knowledge or give their advice. So
And
I
that's something
appreciate
there,
that.
G. You've kind of said something there with people who don't have, the
Mm,
voice. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why I do talk up now, because a lot of
mm,
people who are not even attached with the game stop me on the street and
mm,
will say, keep doing what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? We hear
mm,
you. And, there's not everyone can have that vocal voice because of that, because let's be honest, they are scared sometimes if they talk out, if
mm,
they approach things in a different way, if they talk on a platform that actually it's going to be held against them. And
mm, mm,
I wouldn't want anyone to go through this game and feel that they haven't got someone, or they aren't able to be able to speak out about what the game has done to them, the good, the bad, or the ugly. And I think that's kind of a role that I've taken on, and I'm more than happy to do that, because ultimately I wouldn't like to be starting my journey again and have a
mm,
tape over my mouth and not be able to express myself in the way that I believe that I could. So if I can help people to be stronger, to have a different
mm,
mentality, to attack the game in a different way, but also to know that they've got someone they can lean on, then, and gee, that's me.
No, and you're doing a great job, man. Great job, and I can talk to you all day long, but I don't want to take up too much of your time anyway.
No, that's
But
fine. That's
you've also started your own podcast. If you want to share it to the listeners.
Yeah, so we're called The Conversation. So with the likes of Darren Lewis of the Daily Mirror and Rodney
Mm,
Hines of the Voice newspaper, again, it's just a couple of guys who we just want to talk football. And we want to provide a platform to talk football where generally maybe we wouldn't be allowed to talk football because people don't see us in that way, you know. So we touch on all the topics. We get some good guests in, you know, some ex players or journalists or reputable people within the game, and we just provide a platform to talk football and to discuss it in our way, not the way that we sometimes have to watch all the time. So yeah, it's called The Conversation. Just to let you know that in The Conversation, the Ian Conversation is a free. We're on
I'll put it down in
YouTube.
the link anyway. Yeah, go on.
Yeah,
Where can they listen to you guys?
well, so we're on YouTube. You can see all full episodes on YouTube. We're on Instagram and we're on Twitter as well. Everything is at The Conversation.
Wicked, wicked. Unks, I appreciate your time. Thank you
Absolute
again
pleasure, G.
um,
No, really enjoyed
for
talking
sharing
to
your
you.
journey and everything. And yeah, we'll catch up soon again.
Without doubt, without doubt. Really appreciate it, G.
Anytime.